Ladies and gentlemen, folks of all ages, welcome back to episode 4 of my Clockwork Empires Alpha 43 playthrough. So, I realize I haven't got a lot of playing done as such, so that's primarily what I intend to do this time. No more crop talk. I don't need to discuss the new features anymore, so I just concentrate on building up the colony. And you can watch me succeed or more likely fail in a variety of interesting manners. Okay, I'm just going to skip calling in a favor for now. So, last time, I think I had described the lack of iron conundrum, and I think I've got those. Last time we had a bandit raid, there was lots of bloodshed on both sides, and eventually they offered me a truce, which I accepted happily, but that does mean there are now bandits wandering around the edge of camp. Well, I don't know, not much I can do about them. I do have the metal. The metalworks is almost complete. It's just waiting on the assembly of the smelter and the wood, the charcoal furnace. Now I do have a deposit of coal up here, which some of which I've actually mined. You can see it here in my stockpile, even though I can't find it. So it's there. So I actually don't need to make any charcoal to smelt the hematite. Now, a perceptive viewer pointed out that actually I could have skipped a lot of the problems I experienced in the previous episode, because he noticed. I'm assuming it's a guy. Sometimes kind of hard to tell with the YouTube usernames. I actually have a stack of bushel of scrap iron, so I have 3 bushels. Those come as gifts from the fishmen, and you can see them here in the commodities. And those actually function as raw hematite ore. So if you order your metalworks to make iron ingots, but you don't have any hematite, your workers will actually grab scrap iron out of the stockpile and make ingots out of it. So I actually didn't need to go all the way up here and mine out the hematite node and bring it all back and stuff. So as soon as I have a smelting crucible ready, I will have coal, and my workers can grab the scrap and turn it into an ingot, which will allow me to build the mine shaft. So with all that going on, I think I'm going to start building my other buildings. Ideally, I'm going to build them in a loop, which I'm going to enclose. I'm going to plug up the gaps with gabions here, and that will provide at least some kind of barrier. Provide a bit of a barrier for the ravenous herd events, and also attacks from bandits and fishmen. So just going to build a chapel here. Put in some chairs for people to sit in, and of course a door. And I'm going to... there we go. Now, as a user on the official Gaslamp Games forums pointed out quite helpfully, the new shift, work shifts function works. There's a way to use that quite well when it comes to the vicar who works in the chapel workshop. So typically, the vicar will preach and take confession and pray and things, and if other colonists are nearby, they will, if they're spiritually inclined, they will participate, and it will benefit them. They will give some, generally speaking, positive memories, unless they're insane cultists or the vicar is himself an insane cultist. However, because everyone's like super busy working during the day, if the vicar does their job during the day, typically there's no one in the chapel to take advantage of that. What you can do is you can, so by default, everybody's work shifts are turned off at night, and then they're on for these first 6 segments of the day. Excuse me. What you can do for the vicar is you turn on, you allow the vicar to work in early evening as well. And maybe you tell them not to work early in the morning when literally everybody is asleep. And that way, the vicar is able to perform his or her job at the time when all the colonists have finished working and they've all just wandered back into town and they're idle. Often that means they go eat, or they go to sleep early, or they sit in the chapel looking for confession. So that's one of the things that was changed with the way offices function. I'll just forge this. It was that offices can now accept, the colonists in office can now request jobs. At present, that only works in the chapel specifically. So a colonist looking to give confession or looking for a sermon will wander into the chapel and just sit there for a while. And their request goes out to the vicar. And if the vicar is available, he'll or she will come back and do the job, and then they'll both be happy. But more often than not, during the day, this just doesn't work out because everybody's working. But the new office functionality now allows that. Now, that functionality also applies to offices that are planned for the future. One example specifically mentioned by the devs was a barber shop. So in the 1900s, or well, I guess prior to that, in the 1800s, your barbers and your surgeon, being a barber and being a surgeon were essentially the same thing. You would go there for surgery, which is actually kind of gross. But that's something that it's been mooted. Hypothetically, it's planned. It's in the future, right? Hopefully, it works out that way. A barber shop where colonists will be able to go for healing of some kind, and it makes sense for that kind of office functionality to be implemented there. There's been a report. Oh, it's positive this time. Well, that's good. And the idea is a colonist with an injury can wander into a barbershop, request surgery, and then your barber can set their bones or amputate their limbs. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that comes to fruition. But for now, what day is this? Day 12 is drawing to a close. Wow, we're only 12 days into this colony. Man, I've been wasting my time. So the chapel's all ready to go. I mean, all the materials are here when someone gets around to assembling it. The metalworks is complete. So I really ought to assign a crew here. Let's say Tristram Ironworth. That's just a usual number of colonists. Tristram Ironworth sounds like a good person to be working in the metalwork. Oh, there are beetles. It's just this random beetle munching on my crops. Take him out, Hobart. So, I've got coal, I've got hematite ore, I need some iron ingots. So I'm just going to queue up a standing order for 3. I've also got sand, so I might as well turn it into a bit of glass. One thing I should point out, if it's not obvious, is that in addition to the Ravenous Herd event where the swarm of beetles will attack your crops, you'll also periodically get these little ones. Just they appear randomly. And their origin, they actually originate out of a couple of places. They might burrow out of the ground. So they seem to be coming from the southeast at our current orientation. So if I did some exploring there, I might actually find burrows. They look like holes that animals have dug out of the ground, right? But beetles can also come from corpses. So if you leave corpses lying around too long, they will spawn vermin, in this case beetles. So it's in your best interest to bury those corpses or slaughter the corpses, whatever. Dispose of them, however you intend to dispose of them. Okay, chapel's done. Time to assign a vicar. One of the things that was another thing that was changed in 43, and I know I said earlier that I wasn't going to talk about the new stuff, but I am. One of the new things that was changed is that insane cultist vicars now have new behaviors ascribed to them. So hopefully we will see that. Oh, someone's had a dream about a featureless obelisk. probably means Matthias Goodfellow is very insane. We can verify that in a second. Elvira, I'm thinking of, you know what? Let's pick an interesting vicar. Elvira Crump is both morbid, reclusive, and xenophobic. You may recall Elvira Crump actually asked us to change our fish people policy to a hostile one because she hates fish people. Anyway, she's going to be our new vicar. As I mentioned earlier, so I'm going to, you know what, no. She can only do vicar jobs, but I'm going to enable work in the early evening, and then I'm going to disable work in the early morning. So her sleep schedule has been shifted over by one shift. She should preach in the chapel when most of the colonists are free from their work days and when they're idle in the colony and they're looking for preaching. So maybe we'll see that. Well, we can see Bertie Tarr and Henry Chainwick smelting up that ore. Now Bertie's hungry, which is kind of weird because, I mean, I do have food. Actually, thanks to successive wheat harvests, I have lots of wheat. And the thing to do at this point is probably to set up a brewery so I can take advantage of that and start making beer. You know what? Since pumpkin and maize have such similar growth patterns, I'm going to switch over the pumpkin patch to maize. Now just switching over the crop, the field like that, any plants that are currently planted will continue to be tended until they're mature and harvested, but any new plantings will be the new crop. So it's possible to have multiple crops in the same field as you transition, and it's not a problem. So here we have Elvira Crump performing the vicar. Okay, she's clearly praying even though the job label says tend crops. That's probably not significant. It's just something didn't get updated in the database. What else do we need? You know what? I think we finally have enough to support another military squad. That's one thing. And because we have the metalworks up and running, we'll soon be able to produce firearms. Actually, how much flax do I have? I would put beds in the barracks here, but I'm thinking I'd actually like to build a middle-class dwelling. So I'll use those bolts of cloth to build beds in there, and actually I should be planting a flax crop now that I think about it. I've used up pretty much all the flax that came with the colony initially. I have a chance to call in a favor. I don't really need any more workers, and I've surveyed most of the close notes, so I'm just going to not call in a favor and save up that prestige. So here we go, middle class home. So I can finish off the square here, and hopefully give a little fortification for my colony. Okay, let's see. So the middle class beds, there's a middle class single bed, and the middle class bed, which requires double the amount of cloth. I don't think there's a functional difference at the moment. Like, the graphic is bigger, but I don't think it matters to the colonists what size bed they're in. So I'm going to plan out 4 beds here. I'm still getting beetles from somewhere. You know, I think it might be worth scouting out this area to the southeast here. Just to see if I can find or dig up the basically the beetle spawner. There's a fishman in here. What's going on? Also, why isn't anybody cooking? I've got a ton of raw food. Oh, I have no kitchen crew assigned. What? Okay, this is my carpentry crew. This is my ceramics crew. This is the metalworking crew. Okay, Matthias Goodfellow. You are now our cooks. There we go. How did that happen? I know I had a crew assigned to cook. Well, I guess they'll survive on raw food for a little while. They'll be fine, I think. So here's Solomon Crimble, hassling an aggressive fish person. And oh, here we go. Oh, we just missed the service in progress at the chapel. So you see all these guys who just left the chapel? Yeah, some of them will have memories of... Well, okay, maybe not. Some of them should have memories of the service, of the praying in the chapel or taking confession and various other things, which, depending on their disposition and the disposition of the vicar, will help reduce the probability of insanity. So I've got a bunch of projects on the go now. I'm just going to let the colony clear them on its own. So we can see here in the jobs list, there's a take confession job. See, Archibald Ironflood is listening to preaching in the chapel, and Elvira Crump is presumably preaching, doing the preaching. So all these guys are actively having various desires fulfilled in the chapel. If I'd left the work shifts the way they were initially, what would happen is, oh, someone's very happy, is that everybody would be asleep in the early evening, including the vicar, and none of this would happen. Now I'm a little bit concerned because none of these guys appear to have slept. And that's possibly because the evening confession took the length of the entire night to complete. Also, I've got a bandit wandering through town. This must be one of the peaceful bandits. One of the factions with which I made peace earlier. Sullivan's Salty Plunderers. This guy a plunderer? Don't know yet. Fortunately, much like Fight Club, bandits do not have names until they are dead. Right, so I'm going to let this run for a little bit, just so you don't have to watch the colonists slowly building things, and we'll come back to this in a couple of minutes. Okay, so we've come back to our colony. Where did we leave off? Day 12, so now it's day 17. I've seen some significant development, which is to say I built a bunch of stuff. So, we've completed the middle class living quarters. I've also built a brewery here, down in the lower left. Although I haven't assigned a crew here because I haven't started brewing anything. The mine is complete, it's producing hematite regularly. The metal smithing, metal works is complete. I have a standing order for iron ore and charcoal and iron components, pipes and plates. With those pipes and plates, I've built new iron ovens in the kitchen, which cook significantly faster than the old stone ovens. I've also built a textile mill here. Because we were almost completely, we're now out of cloth, can't build any more beds, until we spin some flax into cloth. To that end, I've built the textile mill here with workbench is still under construction, and I've also planted a small patch of flax here. Now that's been going for a little while. So actually I've harvested a bunch of flax, and the second crop is actually about ready to be harvested. I've also planted another small cornfield out here, and another small stockpile out here. This I intend specifically for products of the brewery. Actually, also this cornfield. Now, because corn was added to the temperate biome as as a crop you can plant, breweries in the temperate biome have actually two crops with which to make, well, the equivalent of beer. So tier 1 alcoholic beverages, right? You can brew wheat sacks of wheat flour into beer. You can brew bushels of maize into chicha. And then you have the secondary products that are further distilled from those two. So now you can distill wheat beer into whiskey, and you can distill maize chicha into moonshine. Although I'm nowhere near any of those. Because I think my food consumption, I've got a fair amount of wheat flour. I was actually down to 0 until the next harvest came in. Then all of a sudden I had a ton. I don't have enough food to brew. Like you can see, I constantly have 0 cooked food. Like they're constantly producing food, so it's just always all getting eaten. I don't want to risk brewing, turning any of that into booze quite yet, until I'm sure I can consistently feed everybody. I've got the second barracks. It's complete, and I've also built a few guns at the metalsmith. So I've got at least one in the stockpile, and every soldier of my 2 squads now is armed with some kind of weapon. So I'm not getting those soldier cannot find loadout weapon alerts. Also, because I hit 30 colonists quite recently, I got the commemorative bar of gold from the Empire. I'm thinking I'll use that to make an upper class bed shortly. Oh, someone's cult tendency has just declined. And why is that? Oh, Zora and Shiloh have just been talking about how swell it is not to be in a cult. Generally speaking, everyone in this colony is quite happy. And I think that's because there are a couple of reasons. First of all, I've got the chapel up and running now, right? See all these people taking in the evening mass. But also, there was a new happiness mechanic added to the game. Colonists are now happy to see the presence of soldiers. So occasionally, as soldiers patrol around inside and near a colonist, they'll get a little thought bubble that shows... Colonists will get a little thought bubble that shows up around their heads, indicating that they're pleased by the presence of soldiers. And I believe that has the effect of decreasing their fear. I don't think it actively increases their happiness, but it certainly makes them less afraid, which has the knock-on effect of keeping them sane and more productive and a little bit more satisfied with their horrible, horrible lot in life. So everyone is kind of adequately happy. Well, okay, some more than others. Now, soldiers in training, their primary job is actually to train. And when they train enough, they get red coats and become proper soldiers. But in the meantime, as they train, you can see the effect of this training is that it drives down all 4 of the emotions. It just, as the tooltip says, they're numbed by the exertion. So the colony is pretty stable now. There have been no catastrophic events, nothing surprising. Things are going well in colony life. I'm still getting a slow trickle of beetles somewhere from the east of the colony. And I actually sent soldiers east to scout around to see if I could dig up a burrow or find a corpse that I neglected and spawning vermin. I can't find it yet. I might, I guess if I keep searching, I might eventually find it. But I have enough colonists now that they'll stomp on the beetles, and crop destruction hasn't been too much of a problem either. So here's where we stand with the colony at present. I think it's going pretty well. I'm going to have to cut it off here. Video is running a little bit long. I believe I'll return to this for at least one more episode, and we'll see if we can build maybe the lab or the naturalist's office. Otherwise, well, this has been episode 4 of my Alpha 43 playthrough. I believe I said 34 earlier, so please ignore that. My name is Alfred. The game is Clockwork Empires, as developed by Gaslamp Games. It's in early access, so all sorts of things are subject to change, and you'll find stuff that's broken or not working properly. But I think the game is shaping up pretty well, and it's largely functional, as I hope I've been able to demonstrate. Yeah, I hope this has been informative. Thanks very much for tuning in. Have a good one.